Welcome back to Candy's Classic Game Shrine, everyone. Today, on Return to the Third Dimension, I'm gonna stray slightly from the norm. I won't be talking about a homebrew per se, however, it was the Virtual Boy homebrew community that brought this game to the masses. So, without further ado, let's get into the details of the unreleased yet licensed game, Bound High for the Virtual Boy. Bound High is a game developed by Japan System Supply for the Virtual Boy. JSS began operations in September of 1985 and closed down in October of 2000. They are known for making such games as Chalvo 55, Power Quest, Phantasy Star Gaiden, and Chameleon Twist, to name a few. Japan System Supply has also worked on many different platforms, from Linux to Sega Saturn. When it comes to Bound High, this game solely exists as a result of developer and programmer Hideyuki Nakanishi. As a grad student, Hideyuki found himself interested in wanting to make a fun and original video game. To him, programming was fun, but only if he was making a game that wasn't based on the ideas of others. Through a friend, he got a job at JSS to help an engineer translate the original Z80 program of Pac-Man to the Sony PlayStation. After that was completed, his next task was to develop a game for Nintendo and their up-and-coming Virtual Boy system. In the beginning of this project, JSS had no clear idea or direction for the future game to take. During late nights at the office, Hideyuki would often find different plans for the future Virtual Boy game on the desk of the company president. After going through various game ideas, he felt that they came off as too orthodox and boring. They didn't expand or dare to be something new. Going back to what was mentioned before, Hideyuki finds programming fun, but only if he was making a game that wasn't based on the ideas of others. So, one night at the office, he summarized an idea of what would be Bound High, put it on a piece of paper, and put it up on a wall at the office. He expected the president would find it the next day, but wasn't sure what would come of it. Turns out, when he found it, it was basically greenlit right away. Working with a team of 6, Hideyuki began making his concept a reality. While the team was composed of part-time workers, they worked really hard for nearly a year to get Bound High to the stage where it was ready for consumers. They had gotten so far as to complete the game, manual design, and some packages for the North American market. To help try and hype the game and the Virtual Boy up, it was exhibited at the Shoshinkai, also known as the Famicom Space World, in 1995. The president of Nintendo at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, even noted that Bound High was the most promising title in his keynote speech. Bound High became a part of a bigger plan to save the system from total failure. Nintendo saw the writing on the wall after the abysmal reception of the Virtual Boy launch in Japan, and they were looking for anything they could do to recover the system. They were hoping that Bound High and the elusive Dragon Hopper would be the titles to revive interest in the system. Before Hideyuki and his team could submit their final product, though, Nintendo had finally given up on the Virtual Boy and pulled the plug on their project. Despite the project being cancelled, JSS was paid well and established ties with Nintendo that would pay off into the N64 era. Hideyuki, unfortunately, was not part of the large payment since he was only a part-time worker at the time. He was paid about $10 an hour in 1995/1996 for his work. Despite canceling Bound High, Nintendo still got something out of the deal, though. During the development of Bound High, Nintendo bought the license for the game. They saw the potential of the IP and wanted to protect it. Doing this allowed the game Chalvo 55, which is basically a spiritual successor to Bound High, to eventually exist on the Game Boy. Fast forward some years later, in 2003, community member Chris, aka KR1553, came across and found the lead developer's website and contacted him. He not only agreed to do an interview with Chris, but also shared the source code for Bound High. Hideyuki was so disappointed that the game never saw release, and hoped that sharing the source code could let it finally be played by those who'd appreciate it. After some time, the source code was made into a fully working, almost fully working and complete game. It was after that the game finally got to be played again for the first time since Space World 95, when those lucky few got to try it out many years ago. The rebuild wasn't perfect, and it consisted of some bugs, but considering this was a prototype of an unreleased game that was recompiled from the ground up, folks were willing to let it slide and just be grateful that we got anything at all. Things like this is why I feel the Virtual Boy community is akin to a group of historians and paleontologists. We're always digging and searching for the next missing link to our little world. Once the game was made stable enough, Uncle Tusk made beautiful reproduction carts, boxes, and even manuals for it. Now the game could finally get the love and attention it deserved so many years ago. The original batch of carts wasn't large, but the community was hooked on this little game. Minor works have been done for the game in the following years, like adding a debug feature and creating password generators. But the next chapter of this story didn't really happen until May of 2018. As many viewers have noticed, I'm well known in some communities for my obsession and knowledge of the Virtual Boy. Because of my Virtual Boy obsession, this group of retro gamers in Seattle had a gentleman reach out to me about a Virtual Boy oddity that he came across. He wasn't sure if what he had was real or even exactly what it was, but when he provided pictures to me, my jaw hit the floor. Before my eyes, on my computer screen, what appeared to be the official prototype cartridge for Bound High. For years, the community wondered whether or not any existed, or if all that existed was the source code. Now we potentially had our answer. However, with this being the internet, I reserved immediate excitement, since too many times before, we've had our hopes dashed when some folks have claimed to have unreleased games or ROMs, and they just turned out to be messing with us. I asked for some other pictures of the cart and boards, and put him in touch with the guys over on Planet Virtual Boy, and we got to work. After going through the pictures, talking with the cart's owner, and others from the forum, it was determined to be the real prototype cart for Bound High. We weren't sure which version of the build this was, and could not wait to compare it to what was formerly available. It was arranged so that a cart dumper was sent to the cart's owner so that they can dump the ROM and release it to the community. He made good on his word and surprised himself and us when we came to realize that this was the final build of the game in his possession. We caught one of the white whales of the Virtual Boy community, and it was such an amazing and wonderful experience. Seeing everyone come together for a shared cause and passion and have it turn out so wonderfully was so nice to see. Too many times in the prototype collecting scene do you see lots of fighting, hoarding, and just general douchebaggery. But once again, the Virtual Boy community stands out for being a step above the rest, and I'm so glad for that. With the history of Bound High out of the way, let's talk about how this game plays and what it's about. Bound High is a top-down action puzzle game with various game modes. In each mode, you take control of the hero named Chalvo. Chalvo is a robot who can transform into a ball and uses his power to defend the world by bouncing on and knocking enemies off the playfield. In some game modes, the objective is slightly different, but I'll go into that in further detail shortly. The first game mode is The Adventure of Chalvo, which is the main story campaign. Your goal is to make your way through 4 worlds and help Chalvo bounce on and knock off various enemies in each stage. Each stage poses new challenges, power-ups, and obstacles for you to find and make your way through. As you bounce through the stage, you may find tiles that take you to new stages as well. If you poorly aim a jump and fall off the playfield, you'll lose a life. Certain enemies can also push you off, so be mindful of them and tiles that give way when you bounce on them. Once you've completed a series of stages in each world, you'll face a boss for that level. Once you've defeated all 4 bosses, you will face one more final boss to save the world. In Score Attack, your objective is to hit or exceed a given score for each stage. It isn't as simple as clearing the stage of enemies, as that won't always net you the right amount of points you need. You'll need to chain combos and enemy kills together to maximize your score. If you manage to beat the first 16 stages, 4 more will become available. If you can't beat them, but want to see them, there are passwords that exist for each stage, and they can be found on the Planet Virtual Boy forum when you search for Bound High. The random game mode gives you 2 lives to complete as many procedurally generated stages as you can. It's very similar to your main story mode, but with the fewer lives, it comes at a greater challenge. Pocket and Cushion is similar to billiards and mini golf in my opinion. In this game mode, you need to knock 1 or more of the balls into the holes before the timer runs out. If that wasn't brutal enough, in order to clear a stage successfully, you must score and reach a certain point threshold in order to actually clear the stage. The quicker you get the balls into the holes, the greater your score will be. Okay, now that we've talked about the game modes, here's the controls for the game, which are extremely straightforward no matter which game mode you're playing. Either D-pad will control Chalvo and move him around the playfield. A confirms a selection, B cancels a selection, and Start pauses the game, or starts it in the beginning of the game. That's it. Now for those of you wondering if you can play this game, or if you missed out because the initial run of carts is gone, the answer is not to worry. The ROM is available online and can be played through emulation or put on any of the Virtual Boy Flash cart options that are currently available. There are physical carts of Bound High that can be purchased though through Vintex64.com too. Keep in mind these are not the original run of carts, but still play identically. If you're looking for another way to get a Bound High fix in and don't have a Virtual Boy or just want to see it on a different console, check out Chalvo 55 on Game Boy. Like I said before, it's a spiritual successor to Bound High, but Hideyuki was not involved in this project. In Chalvo 55, you once again play as Chalvo trying to save the Earth. In this game, it's more of a side-scrolling exploratory puzzle game rather than a top-down action puzzle game that was in Bound High. Also, unlike Bound High, there is only 1 game mode in Chalvo 55. And while the game is in Japanese, there are fan translation patches that can be found on romhacking.net while it's still available. My final thoughts on the game is that it's a tragedy that this never got to see an official release. I agree with the former Nintendo president of the time when he said that this would have been an important title for the Virtual Boy. It breathes new life and gameplay ideas into a system that desperately needed direction and a killer app to get people to appreciate the 3D capabilities the Virtual Boy had. This was one of the few titles that showcased what the Virtual Boy could do and the fun that could have been had by anyone that played it. I love how it uses the 3D capabilities of the system to give you something really new for the time. The controls are extremely responsive, and having so many different game modes genuinely adds a replay factor of this game that you don't see in many games of just about any console. Each time you fire it up, it's a brand new experience. So that was my look at Bound High for the Virtual Boy. Let me know what you guys thought of the video and the game in the comments below. Feel free to check out my links in the description, and until next time, take care.